I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. And then I became mad, and then got more disappointed, and now I'm here. Right when I saw Atelier Yumia's first trailer, I was skeptical, to say the least. I've been playing these games for over, half my life by this point, and I've even played the Irish trilogy and the Manichemia games, so I'm well aware Gust hasn't always made the games in the general style they've been doing since Arlen. They change things up, make each sub-series have a unique feel, so what if Yumia looked a little different, Maybe when it actually gets here, I'll play it, and it'll end up being, kind of interesting. That's what I thought leading up to its release, and now that I've played roughly 15 hours of it, I do not want to play anymore. I don't want to play it anymore. I do not like this game and refuse to slog through dozens more hours just to experience more of the same I've seen so far. So while it might seem a bit premature, I'm stopping my playthrough and writing out my honest thoughts here and now. I'm just here to share my thoughts as a longtime fan who was legitimately kind of looking forward to this game, only to end up actually just, kind of hating it. If that doesn't sound like your jam, you're free to click off this video. Nothing's keeping you here. At least I hope not. That'd be a very, very strange hostage situation. But before we get into this proper, I will say this. If you're someone who's never played an Atelier game before and you want to get into it, you should strongly consider making this the first one you try, because it was made for you. So, where to start? How about at the beginning? Sure thing, fellow disembodied voice. Like I said, the first trailers I saw of Yumia had me feeling apprehensive about what the game would be like. And then interviews came out where Hosoi was saying all these things that it supposedly took inspiration from, and each piece of promotional material that came out afterwards just left me with an increasingly sinking feeling. I was worried my prediction had come true after the breakout success of the Ryza trilogy, a smaller company that's just been tottering along for decades, suddenly being given a load of money and abandoning what made their project special. I even played through the demo to get a clearer first impression, and it did nothing to make me feel less unsure of the end result. But I picked up the game anyway because, hey, I still want to support the series' continuation and give it a fair shot. Those first few hours had me feeling very mixed, to say the least. It isn't like Yumia is completely unfamiliar territory for Atelier, but bits and pieces of the experience just didn't sit right with me. Even as I kept playing, I couldn't help but find the whole experience was flimsy. Not in the sense of being farcical or fluffy, but the sense that it was exactly what I feared. It was trying to be a regular, run-of-the-mill, nondescript AAA game by a team that just doesn't do that very well. Starting off with the plot, since that's probably what they'd like us to focus on, it starts out perfectly fine. I'm not going to say it's great, but starting in medias res, going through ruins for the tutorial, and ending with this weird wolf guy beating the living daylights out of protagonist, sure, it works. I don't know why this guy's important or who he is, but at least it's setting up something. Then you smash cut to the start of the plot and begin what I can only describe as a process. You're introduced to the research team, which is the party you'll grow throughout the plot, and Yumia's position within the story. Long ago, by which I mean about 4 years, give or take, there was a giant explosion of mana that ended up causing major devastation, as explosions tend to do. Distrust in alchemy spread throughout the populace. Now Yumia is the only alchemist left, so she joins the research team in an effort to uncover what really happened in the past, continue her mother's legacy, who died in the explosion, and hopefully restore the people's faith in alchemy. And she does so by going around to all the ooky spooky areas and doing a little dance to clear out the Ubisoft towers, making everything all ooky spooky. I'm only slightly exaggerating. Now, in all fairness, this isn't the first time Gus has tried doing something more serious with an Atelier story. The first time the game's released outside of Japan, it was with the Irish trilogy, and those were more in line with their contemporaries. I reviewed those quite a while ago, and while I think I could have done a better job covering them, my thoughts about their stories still stand. They tried making the series have more serious consequences with these grander, larger scope adventures you find in other JRPGs, and they were alright for the time. Gust actually did a much better job with this with the Manichemia titles, and those were a better blend of genre convention and the slice of life aspects unique to the series. In Yumia, between the whole massive explosion backstory, the hostile world, and elements like the weird dragon demon man, it feels like they lean too heavily into, well, trying way too hard. And I know that's a stupid thing to claim something is doing, trying too hard, but I think it's apt in the case of a series like Atelier. Previous games have personal stakes with very little in the way of massive consequences for failure. They're smaller in scope and the setup, and it makes it much easier to be carried by exploration and character interaction. Those tend to be pretty solid for this series, and Yumia puts so much more focus on a central plot line that comes across far too self-serious without carrying much weight. It just feels very surface level, just kinda shallow. Yeah, the world's a bit bleak, sure, the monsters are out and about, and yes, I suppose it isn't good to let people continue distrusting a field of study they were previously fine using in everyday lives, but I just didn't have much of a reason to care about any of it. Looking back at previous entries, it's easier to care about the personal adventures of characters because they weren't massive in scope and implication. It made the little moments of walking around and talking to characters matter so much more, and its quality Yumia doesn't really have when the scale and tone of its plot are more grandiose than they need to be. I want to make it clear, I don't have a problem with a serious plot, nor do I have an issue with Atelier trying to tackle more serious tones, so it is entirely possible it gets better late in the game. But honestly, a story that doesn't give me a reason to care within the first 12 hours I experience it can't be salvaged by what might happen in the last 2 hours. The ending could be amazing, but if the beginning and middle don't inspire any interest, it isn't a good story in my eyes. Also, like, if this is supposed to be some potential world-ending threat on the horizon, it does kind of make the concept of sequels, which you know they're gonna do, it does make that seem a little bit, redundant's not the right word, but it does make it seem a little bit silly, because it's just like, oh no, we killed the world-ending threat, and then the next world-ending threat comes around the corner, and they're just like, oh no, now we have to do this. Just, it's not a good setup for the series. Or maybe it's also because the characters are less interesting than previous games, just like the plot. They come across as so much more bland than the ones we've met before. What's Yumia like? You know, the protagonist. Well, she's friendly and wants to help people. Kind of it, that's all I really got from her. Wow. So intriguing. Gust, I don't know what Naughty Dog has been telling you, but just because the main character is part of a minority, it doesn't immediately make them interesting. Especially when the minority they're a part of is a job. Also, I don't care what anyone says, she has an emo fringe, and I immediately think she's moody. I grew up in the 2000s, that's just what my mind is like. As for the other members of your research team, I am actually having to look up one of their names right now. He's so boring, and he was like the first guy who joined. I remember Isla, and her name is all I can remember. And was it Isla? Isla? I have no clue. Rutger was okay from what I saw from him, even if I'm disappointed he isn't brandishing Uzis and shouting about American football. It's the teeth, I can't help it. Linya, I was kind of looking forward to learning about, mainly because her trailer mentioned members of her tribe going on a quest to atone for their sins when they become adults, which just sounds like something James Cameron would write if put in charge of Codename Kids Next Door. But I didn't even get to have her around much because I quit before leaving the Wellick village, primarily because of Nina. I hate Nina. I see her horrible design, and it just makes me mad about the way Gust, or more likely Koei, has chosen to push the series to appeal to common denominator lowbrow content we already have plenty of. Thank you very much. Like, why is she a gyaru? That just annoys me, because it implies a fantastical society somehow developed a very specific fashion subculture, and a character without the personality to justify this kind of design was qualified enough to join your very important team. There's a good way to make sexually attractive characters without it feeling tacky, and she certainly isn't it. This design is garbage. Victor, the other guy's name was Victor. They're all just so bland and predictable. The cutesy girl is cutesy and energetic. The main warrior guy is skeptical and serious. The delinquent looking guy acts rude for maybe like 5 minutes before immediately warming up to the group. The low effort eye candy can just get the heck out of my sight. Please, I don't want you to be here. And the tiny girl is shy and skittish. Now, if they brought back Pamela, I might still be playing the game, because a lackadaisical ghost who sounds constantly stoned is more interesting than everything I learned about the main party combined. And it isn't like previous entries didn't lean heavily into cliches, but that's because the main drive of exploration and experimentation led you to interacting with everybody and gradually showing more of their personalities. If I were to continue playing, I have no doubt I'm just going to see more of the same kinds of stuff, which is a really awful feeling to have. I don't want to hate these characters, and I don't, except for Dina, but I also don't think I was ever given enough reason to be interested in them. Maybe this lack of interpersonal development is due to the characters playing a larger role within the central narrative, which would be fine if the story didn't come across as bland as a bread sandwich. When the dragon guy showed up, I thought he was pretty cool. He was like wrapped up in smoke, and he was like oh, who's this guy? But then the redhead siblings got all angsty about why he matters and why I should care. I just rolled my eyes and went, of course he is. Why wouldn't he be playing a role like that in a story like this? Everything I saw in the story felt so straightforward and predictable, which isn't a problem if the writers can dress it up well or provide something else to keep me interested. I remember thinking the same thing about Iris 3, a game with one really cool thing going for it, namely the combat, and then the rest is either repetitive, boring, or irritating. And this doesn't even have good combat, but we'll get to that in a second. So, if the story fails to engage and the characters feel more like accessories to the already boring story than people I can get to know, what else is there? Well, Yumia tries really hard in all sorts of other fields like exploration, alchemy, and combat. Now, I'll ease up on the negativity and actually praise something. The exploration can be kinda nice. Gust is gunning for a big open world this time, which carries all the faults they always do, like unneeded icons all over the place and riddling the map with tedious checklist items, but some of the venues you can find are genuinely pretty cool. Looking around the area surrounding the giant trees with their massive roots spreading like tendrils, the whole space having this strange, almost foreboding air about it, it was neat. And some areas had this really cool, hazy mist kind of lighting to it that gave it a nice mysterious feel, and I liked that. Climbing up high to see the pastures spread out along the horizon, you can tell they wanted this game to be appealing from visuals alone. I do wish the soundtrack would play more while I was exploring. It's weirdly absent most of the time, and adding some more ambient tracks to typical exploration would give it a much better vibe, I guess. Is that the word I'm looking for? So there's something I actually kind of enjoy about this game. It's just a shame there's very little reason to explore because of how they changed alchemy. Alchemy, the central selling point and unique characteristic of this entire series, is something they change every single sub-series, sometimes even between games in the same sub-series. The main change they made this time is making it not very good. In what I assume is Gust's attempt to streamline the alchemy system, which were never really complicated to begin with, they've stripped out so much of the experience, there's very little reason to actually engage with it outside of story obligation or just not having enough combat skills to be constantly attacking. Again, we'll get to that in a second. I saw a comment somewhere, I don't remember exactly where, describing the alchemy as ingredient agnostic, which, yeah, that's probably the most accurate way you can put it. Now, the only thing that matters is finding the ingredients that make the biggest resonance, that little circle, so you can capture all these little twinkling stars. There's no quality average, no trait transfer, no skills to manipulate the end result to a significant degree. It's just making a big circle, and you have a recipe for every element to make an item that just makes a big circle, which means the specific ingredients you use don't really matter. Why is that important? Because exploring for new ingredients and experimenting with traits was one of the main reasons you explored in previous games. You were finding new locations so you could gain access to new, stronger items to make your alchemy better. And now that whole aspect is just thrown out the window to make room for flashy animations that take up way more time than needed. Every time you pick an item to make, every core you pick, it's accompanied by this unnecessary flourish that serves no real purpose. So they not only made the alchemy less complex, nuanced, and engaging while removing the main reason you explored in previous games, they made it more tedious to use. That's a trifecta of bad design alterations right there. Also, just the dancing is stupid. Like, let's be honest, the dancing is silly and it's dumb. It's not charming. It's just weird. And considering Yumia's design, the promotional material, the stupid poses in the pause menu, and the treatment of characters like Ryza and Claudia over the years, I can't help but feel like they only made her do this to show off her character model from a bunch of angles all at once while making very specific poses. It just feels really tacky, and there was no reason to do any of this other than they think it's what people want. But I'm here to play a game, as I imagine most people are if you pick this up, and the tedium it adds to playing the game makes it feel so bad. It was even worse when you couldn't skip this recipe choosing animation, and it isn't even flashy. You just had to sit through it until like they updated it to be like, yeah, you can skip this now. It's just so weird. Could previous systems be a bit obtuse? Sure, but nothing that couldn't be learned enough to just get by if you weren't interested in experimentation. You didn't have to master them, you just had to learn how to do it. But it's better for a game to have its core system be something with a slight learning curve than one that doesn't even try to make you think. They have an auto option, the central focus of the series, and they gave you the option to totally ignore the little effort you need to put in to do it this time. The combat feels much the same, being the other main element you engage with as you go about the world. It's full-on action, for one, and when I say action, I mean full-on action. I know Ryza kind of had an ATB system going on, but now it's just outright chaos, and it reminds me of Kingdom Hearts 3 like a really specific way. In the years since I've played Kingdom Hearts 3, I've come to terms with realizing it wasn't very good. And a big part of that is how overloaded the combat was without feeling as impactful as Kingdom Hearts 2 on a base level. So many flashy things going on. Friendship attacks, magic spells, team specials, attraction flow, zippy zops, wibbly wobblies, shoggle wops, just a whole bunch of extra features that clutter the UI and combat experience that all essentially do the same thing of hurting a bunch of stuff. But even just the basic act of smacking things around didn't have the same weight and heft to it as KH2. It looked really flashy, but it just wasn't satisfying because everything died so quickly with minimum effort. Yumia's combat feels much the same. Visually, it's very exciting and what I can only describe as trailer-esque, but in practice, it's very flat. There's a very easy joke to make here, and I'm not gonna do it. Nope. Every party member is locked onto an enemy and all your attacks are assigned a button. Hit the buttons, watch the flashy lights, and get the same sensation you get from throwing balled up socks at your favorite pillow. Maybe it'd be better if I wasn't always looking at the UI instead of the animation itself. The UI is awful, by the way. It's just downright horrible. Forget the charm and personality of different material textures and fanciful menus. It's just gray boxes now. Same as all those other big AAA companies that also have awful UIs. Why do people keep making UIs like this? They have the personality of damp Wonder Bread, and it's so sad. It's so sad. And even getting more party members, the extra animations they crammed into all the transitions just make it more awkward to shift around your party. Same as with the alchemy. See, this here is a legit thing I can say is trying too hard. They had their animation teams just going all out for stuff that actively makes the game more annoying to play. So, yeah, pretty much every system at work in this game is just kind of a flop for me. So much focus on making things look good without making them feel good to engage with. I want to make it clear, I'm fine with developers experimenting with long-running series. Sometimes it can lead to cool ideas fleshed out in fun ways. But that's not what this is. Atelier Yumia is Gust, and likely Koei Tecmo in no small part, using the funds and recognition from the Ryza trilogy to sand off the quirks and personality of a series so it can meet what they consider the mainstream audience's common checklist for the genre. Big, open, but ultimately cluttered world, a more serious story that feels so generic and stale, characters that blend in with any number of JRPG casts, alchemy that just isn't very compelling or intriguing. You get the idea. I really tried going into this game with an open mind. I gave it a real shot, and almost everything about it just doesn't work for me. I've played loads of these games and I enjoy them for different reasons depending on the era. I like the PS2 era games and they don't share much with the Arlen games onward or what came before them, but they have their place and can be fun, except for Iris 3, that game was kind of awful. But Atelier Yumia isn't a case of Gust making an Atelier game different, it's a case of them making an Atelier game that feels like everything but an Atelier game. It feels like a game that wants to be everything except what Gust has been good at for nearly 30 years at this point. It's like a long-standing sandwich shop suddenly trying to sell burritos because everybody else in town sells burritos without realizing there are plenty of people who just like an improved sandwich. Is that so wrong? Let's talk about Yakuza for a second. Yes, I know it's called Like a Dragon now, but that name makes comparisons really awkward, so I'm just gonna call it Yakuza for this section. Now, Yakuza started all the way back in 2005. It had Mark Hamill on the voice cast for some reason, and it ticked along for several entries until Yakuza 0 came out in 2015. After that, everyone went ya crazy and Sega ramped up production on more titles. We got remakes of 1 and 2, a 6th game starring Kiryu, an interquel with Kiryu, a pseudo spin-off series with Judgment that I really like, and they even changed the whole structure of their series by turning it into a turn-based JRPG with Yakuza 7. And just this year we got a new spin-off starring Majima called Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. The people at Ryuga Gotoku really like their job, but despite how much they've jumped up production values and game quantity, they all still have the feeling of a Yakuza game. And last I checked, they're still doing very, very well. Infinite Wealth still has that zany, madcap, very Japanese humor juxtaposed with melodramatic crime thriller stories and tales of wholesome friendship. If I want to play a game that's like Yakuza, I don't have any choice besides playing a Yakuza game. But if I want to play a game that's like Atelier Yumia, I have no end of options for whichever aspect I want. If I want a big open world JRPG, I have, well, Like a Dragon, weirdly enough, or Xenoblade Chronicles 1, 3, or X. If I want a game with fun world traversal, I can play Sunset Overdrive or Gravity Rush. If I want a game with good, flashy combat, I can play Kingdom Hearts 2, Bayonetta, DMC 3 through 5, or God Hand. If I want a game that's atmospheric and explorative, I have Chants of Sennaar or Ihatovo Monogatari. And probably the most darting comparison, I don't swear on this channel, so I have to find other words. Dooming. That's a better one. The most dooming comparison, if I want a game with a good crafting system, I can play almost any previous Atelier game. Previously, the series worked on such a different axis you couldn't make easy comparisons to other series, they just did their own thing. Now, they're clearly trying so hard to be like everything else, the comparisons are as inevitable as they are unfavorable. There's such a thing as precedence, as history, as legacy, and this game might as well be starting over from scratch because that's what it was made to do. If you're someone who has never played an Atelier game before, I actually think it's worth considering Yumia as your first title in the series. They're really trying to make this as approachable for newcomers as possible. While I think the end result doesn't represent the rest of the series well and just kind of blends in with the sea of other games that do much the same stuff, I understand why they did it. You know, they're a business. I'm not going to act like this franchise is sacrosanct or anything. The Atelier subreddit has been getting a bunch of posts about how much people like the game, but I've noticed everyone who makes posts like that has either only played a bit of Ryza or are complete newcomers. Imagine if they like the game enough to go back and play something like Verona, that'd be extreme whiplash. And if you're someone who picked this game up without knowing anything about the series, or someone else who just genuinely likes this game, good for you. And I'm not being facetious about that, I genuinely mean good for you. Thank you for supporting this series, and it's nice you're enjoying this. So if you like it, tell me why you like it in the comments. Just understand, I don't like this game for personal reasons, and you like this game for your own reasons. This whole video is just my opinion, and in my opinion, I don't think Atelier Yumia is very good. I tried it, I really gave it a shot, and it's just not my thing. This is exactly what I was worried about when I saw those first few trailers, and now that I've played it, my fears were realized, and I'm left a little bit angry, a little bit disappointed, but mostly just sad. This game makes me sad. But who knows? Maybe Red White will give me what I'm wanting if they just show us like any info on the game. I really hope it isn't just an offline version of the gacha. That would be That would be very painful. And it's entirely possible they'll improve the systems in the next Envision game and I'll like it more. We'll just have to see when the time comes. Nothing I can do about it, but at least I will always have the rest of the games. This didn't erase them from existence, nor will the sequel, which will probably still be out next year. Maybe I'll even revisit this game before then, and my thoughts on it will change, but that is most certainly not in the near future. For now, I guess I'll go finish my current playthrough of Eska and Logi. You have a nice day now.